Oh, both
Go again.
scissors.
Gotcha.
Oh.
Property first.
So I went
Let's do it.
paper and John went scissors and sliced me up. All right, what's your first point, baby
Righto.
girl?
So, well, property, it's the most tangible. We can see it, touch it, feel it. What are you making notes about?
Well, for my reply, I'm already slicing holes in your freaking BS points.
So you can drive past it, you can go inside it, you know the asset that you're going to buy or currently own, you can, and that's a magnificent feeling because we talk a lot about the sleep at night factor, and the sleep at night factor is absolutely evident when it's a tangible asset such as property. The comfort of knowing it's there and it's not out in the stratosphere or the any other sphere for anyone not to see is real with residential property in Australia. And we're talking residential property, aren't we?
We are, John.
Yes.
Well, it's up to you.
Yeah.
If you want to keep it to residential investment property only.
Yeah.
That's
and
fine.
I was told yesterday that we're not talking owner-occupier.
Yeah, like you can't say as one of your points, well, if I live in it for 10 years and it goes in value, I can sell it and it's capital gains tax free.
All right.
So that's
I've got one up my sleeve to say you can't use that. All right. So that's point number one.
It's tangible.
It's a tangible
Okay.
asset.
And that's a positive, is it?
Oh,
Is that what you're leading with, is it?
strong. Well, they're in no particular order, Glenn.
Neither are mine. Okay, I'd like to shoot your point to Shat first. It's most tangible. You can drive past it, you can go in it. I get that. But if I buy shares in Woolworths, can you not drive past Woolworths?
You could.
Can you go into Woolworths?
You can.
So enough said.
Yeah, good. I like that retort.
Yeah. So
I'm not here to say right or wrong. I like your retorts.
Okay.
And I'm here for the people today. And like it or not, when
you are a man of the people, aren't you?
When we buy property, we can drive it. It's just questionable as to whether I'm going to drive to the BHP headquarters and drive past it.
Yeah. So you're speaking more to the mindset. I'm feeling it.
Yes.
I own it. All that stuff. I can touch it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's, okay.
Cool.
Point number one.
Okay. My
shares.
first point is accessibility and flexibility. And I'll talk about that from the point that I can buy shares really easily, like most of the population can. From $5, I can start to get invested. I can set up automatic investing, so it's like takes care of itself. I've got the accessibility to different asset classes on the market. And I can also buy property through equity markets.
Yeah.
So the accessibility to the everyday Australian and the flexibility that I can buy a variety of different asset classes, that's got to count for something. And
It does.
the good thing about investing in shares, and particularly we'll talk about ETFs, a bundle of shares, I can get started with a low amount and just slowly build up. Where if I want to buy a property, there is a really big, large upfront amount that I have to cough up. Then most people also need to use debt. So not only that, just as a little side piece, that they might fit into some other things, but buying shares, it's a good way to have a real hands-off approach. So if you don't want to, be in the weeds of the management of it, you can just buy a one-stop shop ETF and just funnel money into it. And obviously when I buy shares, I don't have to pay legal fees. I don't have to pay pest and building. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's fair.
I'm kind of starting with the accessibility and the flexibility.
Yes, no, it's definitely accessible. It's great for the first-time investor trying out the investing world. I think the accessibility is such that it may have an app and you may be able to look at the performance of that app on a regular basis. i.e. every 10 seconds. Don't know if that works towards the emotional investor that looks at a green or a red when they wake up each morning. So I love the accessibility of it.
Yeah, because every Australian tomorrow who's an adult or even with a tax file number can buy shares tomorrow.
Yes.
This afternoon.
Yes.
Not every Australian can buy property tomorrow or this afternoon.
Granted.
Now, we will talk about, in another one of my points, the point that you brought up about the access of seeing it all the time. But in terms of accessibility, I was talking for someone who wants to start invested. There's a real low barrier to entry.
Yeah. No, it's like playing reserve grade before you play seniors. So that what you're saying is investing in shares is like the reserve grade.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all.
Oh, you're not.
No.
Sorry, that's what I was hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you heard wrong.
Okay. All right.
What's your next point there, Jonathan?
Well, it does, on the point that I raised there, to the contrary, as a property investor, we don't get emotionally wrapped up in the highs and the lows and the fluctuations of it on a daily basis like we do with shares, potentially. So just the nature of what it is, we don't see it on an app. We don't see the value today, tomorrow, the next day, the fact that it's dropped 8%, gone up 12%, etc. So the fluctuations or the lack of fluctuations or the lack of knowledge maybe even mean that it's a hands-off approach and we can...
So property is good for someone with no self-control. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm merely saying that if I'm a low-risk investor that doesn't want to get wrapped up in the emotion of the highs and the lows, so we're not seen at the casino throwing it on red. It's a great asset class because we've almost forgotten it's there.
So you've used the word casino
Yes.
in almost a comparison to property.
No, not a comparison.
Or a alternative.
Alternative.
Yeah. And you've also, but for me, you've used that C word. I can think of another C word right now.
We're only 10 minutes in.
You've used the C word kind of in the same corner as shares? Which is a really, it's low-hanging fruit, and you're better than that.
No, like I see it as a circle, not a square.
Right.
So there's no corners.
See, I don't see, like in terms of any broad-based equity investing, top 200 companies, I don't see any correlation with any type of gambling or casino. Now, that specky that told me about a few years ago, maybe put that in the same pool. Noting that you held on and probably made some money and I got the hell out of there.
Because you saw the fluctuation, case in point.
I was just like, where did this guy get this?
You saw the fluctuation.
Yeah.
If you hadn't have seen the fluctuation, would you maybe still have that today?
Yeah, I'll grant you that. And because I've got private equity or I've put money into companies that unlisted, put the initial seed capital in, literally sits in the balance sheet of my family trust that says investment. I have no idea if it's worth double that or half of that.
Yeah.
So I will concede that. And I'll flip it back to...
Another C word, by the way.
Yeah. I'll flick it back to my second point, and I think we can almost dovetail our points.
Yes, we
Because
can.
this was later on and down in my list.
Okay.
But I had it as an advantage, and I think what we need to say is with any type of investing, there is a pendulum of advantages and disadvantages, and they will swing both ways, right? But when I'm talking about the advantages of equity markets, you can actually have your daily position and the value, your net worth, you can know about it daily. Now,
that can be good or bad.
and that's right. And that's an advantage because it does, it kind of leads into the liquidity thing, which I'll get into, but that's just another thing that you get with equity investing. You categorically know, where sure, you might have a real estate agent go out and go, yeah, this property's worth that. The next day, another agent might go out and go, no, it's worth this. It's like, it's all speculative until you've got a buyer lined up and it actually sells. Where with equity markets, you do know the
Value.
actual valuation
Yes.
daily. And that is a double-edged sword. And that's why education needs to come into it with, sure, there will be a share price fluctuation, but you still own the underlying amount.
Yes.
So I will, I'll grant you that two-edged sword with that.
Right.
What other points have you got there for property being the goods?
So point 3. The big kahuna, this one.
Leverage.
The government love it.
Do tell.
To the point that they do not let it fail. They dance around these initiatives to fix the housing crisis and take away capital gains tax and all these other things. But they know that the politicians in the country, let's say there's 400 of them, are all in that 1% that you spoke about at the start of the show. They know it's a good asset. They know it's strong. They know it's reliable. So them tinkering with the policies in Australian property is not on the agenda. They may appear as though they're going to do it, but when push comes to shove, they're not going to touch the success of residential property in Australia for the next 100 years.
Yeah, see, I would counter that. And, when you started talking, it sounded like you were describing a Ponzi scheme. But and the only reason I say that is, like, even since the late 90s, early 2000s, every government, whether it's Liberal, Labor, whatever, they've effectively propped up the property industry in Australia.
Yes.
Now, I think it isn't because politicians own houses. I think it's the underlying propping up the building and construction industry. So there is more jobs, things are flowing, but looking in, state governments, federal governments, and, you want to win votes, give people money. That works. State and federal governments all around Australia have literally just poured so much money into Australian residential property over the last 20 years, 25 years. It's 2025 now. The whole thing, it's a bloody joke. And there's this tipping point of like, well, the prices are worth, like the housing price is worth so much, it's almost unattainable. And then there's not enough to house people. So, yeah, you're right. The governments do love it, and governments do not want to see property fail. And I don't think Australia could be in a position to ever have a major property crash because of the lack of supply.
Yeah, correct. And I was only looking at something this morning that said, well, we've built 9,000 dwellings last year. Like, we're already 10,000 a year short, and we're nowhere near the target. So we're going backwards year on year. But I suppose it's twofold. It's individual politicians saying, I've got a property portfolio, I don't want to affect my nest. And I don't know how many politicians there are in Australia, but every electorate has one.
Yeah, I don't think it's and I don't know, but I don't think it's that personal to the individual politicians.
Well, I think if we get into the weeds of it, it's more important than we think. Like if and we've got a debate going on, but if there was 10 of us in the room that all had interests in said company, I don't know, any company, and we were getting pressure to derail that company and we had skin in the game in that company, would we be inspired to change that?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, like, if, no one wants their house prices to fall, but if my portfolio had to come off 15% to allow friends and family to buy a house in this lifetime,
yes,
I wouldn't care.
I know, but you're not the majority.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so you're saying governments love it. Rightio.
Both collectively and individually as people.
Rightio. Okay, my next point is liquidity. Now, I can sell shares and have the cash in my account within 2 days. There are no agent fees. I don't have to go to a lawyer. I don't have to wait lots of time. And in fact, as of 2024 in December, the average time to sell a home in Australia is approximately 32 days, which interestingly enough, it increased from 28 days in August and 27 days in the previous spring. So things are potentially slowing down out there.
I've got a thought as to why that's the case.
Yeah. So I can have cash in my bank and sell my portfolio within 2 days. Or if I had to sell a house, it's going to be 30 days plus the settlement period anyway. So are we talking 2.5 months before you get the cash in your account? Now, the other thing with the liquidity, if I was in a pickle and we didn't have our emergency funds and I needed to sell a portion of my portfolio, I can log in and go, yeah, I need to sell $50,000, I need to sell $5,000 and have that in my account in 2 days, where I can't sell a sunroom on my investment property.
Part of the house.
Liquidity is a big thing. And if you buy property, you just need to know if you ever need to sell it, it could take 2 or 3 months for that cash to be in your account.
It could. Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. So what you're saying is for those that haven't got their ducks in a row, not prepared and didn't do their research, they're wanting their money quickly, so they're forced to sell and they can get it in their bank account in 2 days.
That's what I'm saying, John.
I'm more than happy with
Or
that.
even if you don't have your ducks in a row, you've always got the option to sell.
You've always
whenever.
got the option. That's that part of it I like.
Yeah.
Yep. So as a property investor, we're probably thinking more long term generally and saying, well, okay, we're planning to sell the house in 6 to 12 months. We'll put the wheels in motion to get that happening, and we factor in the 2 to 3 months time frame. In Perth at the moment, it's 8 days, so we're probably and settling in about 30 days generally. So that's down to about 30 to 40 days. So not too bad, but I get your point. There's, the liquidity aspect of shares is definitely a positive.
What else have you got?
Let me put.
Or do you want to tell us why you think the days on market have grown?
Yes. My uneducated view on that is housing prices are more expensive than they were 10 years ago. When people are spending more money to acquire assets, they take more time. There's more thought and process going through their minds. Therefore, that's extending some time periods. Now, when you're saying, what did you say, 27
to 32.
32, so 5 days. Like if that was 27 to 47, we've got an oversupply of property. 27 to 32 is not an oversupply of property. My thought on that is it's the value of the property and the thought of, wow, I'm actually spending $1 million now, not $500K.
You're up.
I'm up. So since this is investment properties only and not owner-occupier, I'll leave my owner-occupier out of it, but I'll include it.
Rightio. I'll buy it.
No money down to buy my first investment property because I'm using equity from the banks to fund my first investment property. So I don't need any of my hard-earned cash. I can keep that in my bank, or I might even buy some equities with it. And I can use all of the bank's money to go and buy my asset.
Yeah, but it cuts both ways. You if you wanted to buy equities and you had a home loan and you had cash, you'd borrow against the home, and at least that portion of the debt's deductible. Anyway, continue.
Say that again?
So if I had $100,000 cash
Yes.
and equity in my house, it makes more sense to get a mortgage for $100,000
Yes.
and buy equities with that debt.
But the
And
risk
then
in
pay it.
buying equities, I would say volatile, to go and buy. Well, first of all, you can't lend 80% of its value from the bank to buy shares.
You can.
Very rare.
Not really, but continue.
I would dispute that.
Okay.
Whereas banks can lend up to 95% of its
Yeah, I can
value.
get a NAB equity builder loan with a 80% LVR.
For how much? Like, what would be the max you could borrow?
Oh, it'd be dependent on your income,
Yep.
servicing, how much deposit you have. Same as property.
What props that up? You need bricks and mortar?
No. So if I had 20 grand, I could go and borrow 80 from NAB and they would secure the 80 against the equities that you're going to buy.
Okay. Those equities need to be like blue chip, ASX?
Yeah, they've got to be in the top 350.
Yeah, okay.
Which-
so there's a few limitations.
Yeah, it's not huge. And you get ETFs and it's probably the same. Like, you're not going to be buying crap investment properties either.
Hopefully not, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, my point is we can put very little of our own cash down and borrow large portions from the bank because they respect bricks and mortar as an asset type to lend against,
Okay.
basically. That's the equity 101.
Yeah, rightio. Well, again, to retort that, I can borrow off my house and buy equities.
Generally speaking, you would say not as easy.
Not the difference is with property. So if I had 100 grand equity and I got a cash out, it would be easier to buy a residential property because the bank would use part of that property as security. So you can get more leverage easier.
Not
you
if they
can-
took the 100. They take the 100, use that as deposit.
That's right, and borrow another 400 or whatever.
Yeah.
So you've got a better runway for leverage with property. But it's the fact anyway, because you have to spend that. There's like this floor where you're not really getting good property in Australia for under 500 grand anyway. So
Because it's performed.
yeah, because it's so bloody expensive.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is, if I did have 100 grand and I set up a second mortgage on the house, I can invest that 100 grand into
In equities. Yes. Yeah. But then
But I've
the
only got
amount
100.
over that-
I've only got 100 grand exposed to growth assets. Or if I buy a property with an extra 400 of lending secured against the investment property, I've got
500.
exposure to 500
Yeah.
of growth assets.
do you want to get to that point that I've wrote?
Well, let me go to my next point.
Okay.
Because you're running out of points there, I can see. So I'll leave you with a couple.
Mine are pretty damning though.
Yeah, I'm just so shook. My next point is diversification and the mechanisms that I can have within equity investing. Within the universe of equity investing and securities, I can invest in Australian shares. I can invest in international equities. So I can get off the island to do my investing. Where I dare say you wouldn't have many clients at your business who are buying investment properties in New Zealand, in
No.
other parts of the world.
Correct.
So I can get off the island. I've got access to corporate bonds. I've got access to alternate asset classes. I can even buy Bitcoin now on exchanges. I can buy gold. I can buy infrastructure. I can buy commercial property. I can do a lot. And if I wanted to have a bit of a set and forget setup, and I purchased the Vanguard Diversified High Growth Managed Fund, or ETF, guess how many underlying securities there would be. And so a security is basically a thing that can be traded on an exchange. So corporate bonds is a security. Shares in CBA are securities, right? So securities can be anything that's exchange traded.
Yeah. Oh.
So the Vanguard Diversified High Growth Fund, it's got exposure all around the world, a whole heap of different asset classes. Guess how many underlying securities there are that you will have exposure to?
In total?
Yeah.
Not just in the one fund?
Yeah, so if I put $1,000 into
Diversified fund?
VDHG,
Yeah.
how many underlying securities have you got exposure to?
I'd be totally guessing.
Ooh, that's what we want.
100.
100. That's cute. 18,192.
There you go.
So my premise with diversification, what is more risky? Buying one property in one location with one person paying rent, or spreading your money over 18,000 different underlying securities? What is more diverse? And what is more safe?
I don't know if it's more safe, but it's definitely more diverse.
Or less? What is less risky?
I would argue that there's more of the unknown of what those 18,000 are doing versus knowing you can research in one particular location and buy one asset. Like there's 18,000 suburbs, more than 18 around the country. You're not going to buy a property in each one because it's too pricey. But definitely diversification ticks the box there for sure.
So, but the problem is if you say, yes, it's more diversified, and I personally think it's less risky buying
because if 17,000 don't perform, the other 1,000 do perform. You've got it.
Yeah.
No, I agree
so
with
the
that.
risk is spread. So if risk is spread, by default, there's less risk.
But do we worry about what all those 18,000 are doing, what they are?
Well, you can basically see it all.
Yeah.
Like you can see the underlying funds, and then you can drill into that fund. And the whole thing is, it comes back to, do you want to buy a property or not? And if the answer is yes, why do you want to buy a property? And someone like, I just like property, or I want to reduce my tax, or some other BS like that. You've just got to know that you, one, are going to need leverage to do that, which it's got some more risks there. You've got interest rate risk.
Yes.
So you just need to, and I think this whole underlying thing is wherever you make your bed, you need to lay in it and know the bed that you've made.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the cool thing is, if you were like, yeah, I'm a property investor and I've got a heap of property here and I don't like shares, but I really like gold for some reason, you could use equity markets just to invest in gold. So you've got that diversification and the mechanisms to be as flexible as you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Our diversification play in property is go and buy in a different town or different state.
Yeah.
So some would say that's amazing diversification. Others, when they compare it to 18,000, would say it's not. But as you said, my passion's property or my passion's equities. I'm going to buy a hybrid of one of those assets within property because that's my thing, essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, let's take a break, and when we get back, we will continue this chat on shares versus property. We'll be back right after this. Okay, we're back. Hey, announcement, everyone. If you are interested in buying property, John's audiobook is now available. Sort Your Property Out and Build Your Future is now available as an audiobook. If you do like shares and you want to learn more about that, my latest book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, is also an audiobook and a hard copy book. So, yeah, if you want to get into the property world or the share world, we've got a couple of books.
Compare the two assets.
Compare the two assets.
Did you audiobook your audiobook?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't.
No, John got you're supposed to tell people. John didn't read his because he couldn't be bothered.
Well, they're going to find out when they listen to it. It's not going to be my voice.
They're going to start with my voice. I read the forward.
Did you?
Yeah, my voice.
No, I didn't get a choice on the forward. In any case.
Well, you didn't write your own forward, mate.
Did I tell you? Oh, yeah, that's right, you did. Did I tell you? No, I haven't, because I've only just got back. Shout out, I forget her name, and that's bad of me. I'm walking to Arsenal versus Everton. Just got off the train, family in tow, my father-in-law. This girl, lady, and her partner stopped me. Are you John Pidgeon? Kid you not.
Gosh.
And I'm like, yeah, and I was sort of half taken aback because people going everywhere and I'm in the middle of London.
Oh, great, because we're from Interpol and you're under arrest.
Yeah. So I looked at the family, they looked at me. And any case, listener of the show, moved over to London, live in London.
Gosh.
There you go. Small world.
It really is. Well, shout out to the listeners in London.
Yes, and it's good that there is some.
So the audiobooks are available. Sort your property out and build your future, and the quick start guide to investing. We'll put links to the main books in the show notes. But thank you for your support. If you have purchased that or are planning to purchase some of our resources. All right, let's move along. What is your next point?
This is a minor point, but a very powerful point.
Poignant, even.
Poignant. Property is that reliable that they'll allow parents as a guarantor to allow their kids to buy their property. So a parental guarantor can come into play. Here's the asset that's owned by the parent. Kid gets to go and buy a property, no money down, essentially.
Yeah, but you don't need a property to go guarantor. A parent could cough up money and put on a term deposit.
They could, but they're jumping more hurdles in order to get that across the line. Parental guarantee, here you go.
Well, it is
go
a parental guarantee,
property.
But it's a term deposit, not another property.
With the bricks and mortar as the underlying asset.
Okay, clutching at straws, but
we're not clutching at straws. That is very powerful. You asked Rachel from Sphere Home Loans, our major partner. She froths over PGs.
Yeah, I bet she does. I bet she does.
So it is pretty powerful, you'd have to admit.
All right.
Especially when there's a housing crisis.
Well, hopefully there's a house to use the PG for.
Yes, but there's also a cash flow crisis. So that helps with getting people into the market, which is a good thing for keeping a roof over their heads, although this is out of that conversation today, the roof over the head.
It is. I might let you have it in the after party.
No, it's
no,
all
no,
right.
no. I will let you have it, John. I will let you have it.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
my next
your point.
Look, there's no point me making stuff up. I may as well just look at the facts and look at the data. My next point is on performance.
Ooh.
So over the last 30 years, just kick something under the desk. Over the last 30 years, Australian residential property equate to an average annual compounding growth rate of, what number do you reckon?
30 years, so
yeah,
we're talking 1994.
1992 I've got.
1992.
So since 1992.
That Australian property?
Yeah, just average annual compounding growth rate.
7.8.
5.4.
Where was that from?
I'll find out. I don't have it up here.
Yeah, well, I've got another figure that I'm going to shoot in a sec.
I will bring that up. And that's what I mean, grain of salt with some of this stuff. But when we look at the last 30 years of the S&P 500, do you know what the S&P 500 is, John?
Yeah, it's 500 stocks.
Where?
Somewhere around the world.
Yeah, so it's the largest, it's a weighted index, the top 500 listed companies in the USA. which you've got a lot of global exposure there because a lot of US companies
Yeah.
have offices and stuff all over the world. Approximately 10% a return
Right.
with dividends reinvested. Without dividends, around 8 to 9%.
Right.
So you could call that 8.5. The ASX 200, which is the top 200 stocks in Australia, 9.8% with dividends reinvested,
Right.
and around 4% without dividends reinvested. So just the price. But since about the year 2000, dividends have accounted for about 60% of the ASX 200 total return.
Right. So not the growth in the asset, just simply the dividend that's derived from it.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting.
In what way?
Well, it tells me that if I buy something for $1, the growth rate on it's going to be far inferior to property because 60% of the shares growth has come, or the return has come from the dividend, not the actual growth.
So are you telling me you wouldn't buy a property that has a high yield, knowing that you might not get the capital growth, but you'll get a higher yield?
Cash flow pays the bills. Capital growth sets you free. So I've got another stat that tells me I wanted to go back further than that. That says from 1950, Australian property 8.29%, Australian shares 7.57%.
Was that dividends reinvested or not with your Australian shares?
I don't know.
Okay.
So either way, we're 1% out. Either way, we look at it. Generally speaking, the debate around the barbecue's been neither here nor there. The big difference is in the leveraging of your money that you're spending.
Yeah, which you have to leverage. Well, most people have to leverage when buying property. But the problem is with that leverage, you're taking on inherent risk. So
when investing is risk, any investing.
It is, but with leverage, there's just another layer of risk.
So if I've got 150,000,
like it'd be interesting, and I'm not smart enough, and I don't know if someone could do it, what the risk-adjusted return would be.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good to say this is what the house prices have done over the last 50 years or 30 years. But when we say, well, there's an added inherent risk of interest rate risk or lose your job and all this stuff that comes with a mortgage,
yes,
that's got to count for something.
Which should be impossible to analyse because your risk profile is different to mine, which means I might invest in something that's completely different to yours.
Yes.
My knowledge levels, my research as a whole.
But this, it's the same thing. Like we've looked at the average of the Australian property market.
Yes.
And then the average of the Australian share market. There's people that have bought properties and individual stocks that have outperformed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's a lot that haven't as
Gone
well.
the other way. Yes. All I know is that if I can get 7 or 8% on any asset, I've done well.
So
regardless,
buy more equities.
Well,
you'll have less risk, more diversification.
So I've got 300K of cash sitting around, hypothetically. I'm putting 150 of that into shares, and it performs at an astounding 10% over and above the average that you were banging on about. That's 15K that I've got as a return on investment on my 150, which is a 10% return. Yep. I use the other 150 to put into a 600K property, so I'll put in a 20% cash deposit, relatively low risk because I'm only lending 80% of its value. And I also get a 10% increase. That gives me 60,000, which is over 30% return on my deposit or investment. So the power of leveraging, I've diversified, I've bought some shares, and then I've leveraged my money into real estate, got the same return with both asset classes, but the return on my deposit or my money that I've invested is far greater.
But have you netted off borrowing costs in that calculation? Because it can't be that simple. So you're saying we've got access to a greater amount because we've leveraged, but we have to take off running costs and interest payments.
So provided that, so you're talking like stamp duty and legal fees and things like that.
Literally the interest on the debt that you've used to leverage.
Yeah, well, when you look at, might not be the case with every investment, every property, but when you look at the interest versus rent, in a lot of cases that's same.
Yeah, so it's just floating along neutral. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like property, the problem in Australia is if you pick the wrong property, you won't do well at all. You just go sideways for 10 years.
Well, that can be said for everything, can't it?
Well,
you pick the wrong business, you pick the wrong share, you pick the wrong...
most people would be investing in broad-based index. So you're not having the single stock risk that you inherently have with the single property risk when you're buying one property. And don't get me wrong, I like making money, I like having money, and I've got properties and I've got shares, but logically, you just need to know that the property investing, there is just a higher level of risk and annoyance.
Yeah, I don't know if that's... I don't necessarily agree with that. Depending on what you're saying defines risk. Because people perceive risk differently. I would say...
So the fact that is one of the factors that you can physically touch it, does that mean reduce risk?
I think so.
Yeah, see, that's lunacy.
Well, you
because
could
it
say
just means you don't understand how equities work.
You
That's
could
all
say
it says.
that 18,000 different securities is also lunacy because I don't understand all those 18,000.
That's what I just said. If you don't understand what you're doing, you shouldn't put money into it. And if, like, I understand this thing here, you understand property, you can touch it, that's less risky. It was like, well, it's actually not.
But if your security that you've just invested in, would you know about every security that underlies?
No, because I'm buying a market. And so I invest in the S&P 500. I know that I'm buying the top 500 companies. And if one company literally disappears off the planet, you won't even notice a blip in the portfolio.
Yeah, see, you're talking equities as opposed to individual stocks.
Well, they're both the same.
Well, sorry,
I'm talking like a bundle, an ETF.
Correct, ETF versus individual stocks.
Yeah. But I would say the same thing. If you had your share brokerage account and you just had your 200 grand just in Woolworths, it's less risky because I shop at Woolworths. That's also lunacy.
Yeah, but it provides people perceived comfort.
That's right, and it's perceived comfort.
Yeah. Yes.
And I just like to think I live in reality. And when you look at the facts, having exposure to one thing, you can have all the warm and fuzzies in the world to make it feel less risky, but it actually is.
I know, but warm and fuzzy helps people take action, doesn't it?
I guess it does.
Now, where was I going? You go.
Well, okay, so we've talked about performance. You rebutted. My next point with shares over property, the cool thing is you've got no out-of-pocket expenses or maintenance. Shares don't lose their job or get sick. Hot water systems don't stop working with shares and ETFs. They just don't. the retaining wall and stormwater issues that I had at freaking Lake Haven just doesn't happen with my share portfolio. Like, just doesn't happen. I don't have to deal with people or agents. I don't need to put landlord insurance or building insurance in on my shares. So I'm very confident that I've got pretty smooth sailing. I just keep shoveling money into my equity portfolio. I'm not going to get a phone call. Oh, hey, there's a freaking leak in the tap in the upstairs bathroom.
No, that's fair. If we do our research, we try to avoid all those issues that you've had with your property. But yes, that they can pop up from time to time when we don't expect them. It's going to be a slow bleed when we're just putting money into equities, not using the bank's money to create real wealth.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And it's probably more of a philosophical discussion in Australia. Is property an investment, or should it just be considered housing? Like, should property go up hundreds of thousands of dollars within 2 years, 3 years? Like, that's so weird. Like, I like money, I'll take it, but it's so bad.
It's interesting you say that, because I was asking a lot of people when I was in Europe, UK, over Christmas, about this. It's like, well, the housing growth that they had in the UK relative to what we had in Australia through COVID. So why aren't you using your equity? Oh, we just don't do that. I mean, what do you mean you don't do that? Well, it's just not the done thing.
But you've got to think as well, Australia is basically a bank and a mine. That's what our financial system is.
Yes.
Digging up shat.
Yeah.
And giving mortgages.
Yeah, but the concept still remains, supply and demand. People need to live in houses. Vacancy rates, rentals, like all the indicators I was looking at in this particular town, and I stayed there for a week, so I got to know it pretty well. Why weren't you using the equity to buy something else? Because the numbers were relative to what we do here in Australia, but the mindset of I just don't go and buy more property.
See, I reckon the US housing system is probably a lot better. Houses are more affordable, so people can actually afford them. And if you are an investor, you're not doing it for the high capital growth.
It's a yield.
It's good yield. Like, that's a pretty good balanced system.
But it's again a slow bleed if they're relying on just yield through property, because as you said, running costs and everything else eat all those running costs up.
But that's the whole thing. Like, it's a weird thing. Like, your business, property coaching and all that stuff, you're probably not doing it in many other countries.
No,
so
you're
is
not.
that an issue? Can you sleep at night, John?
Well, it comes back to people's fascination with the bricks and mortar, doesn't it?
Well, I think it just, I don't know. I'm pretty much done with buying residential investment properties.
Well, we're going to discuss in the after party what your last investment was and what the performance on that was.
Which one? The unit or the other factory?
Factory.
Yeah, but that's not a residential investment property. That's why
it's property.
Yeah, but it's not residential investment property.
That's why I'm saying after party, not the debate.
All right.
But in any case, you want to invest in something that people need. People don't need equities. They choose to invest in equities as a wealth creation pathway.
Well, everyone invests in equities in Australia.
Through their super.
Yeah.
But over and above that, they choose to...
Which is a cultural thing.
Yes.
And I'm saying that culture is probably cooked.
As in people won't do it anymore?
No, that it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's right. But that's why do housing prices go up? Well, emotional buyers want their own home to live in.
Yeah.
That's the number one reason. It's not investors or anyone else.
No, and if you look at the actual data, foreign ownership and investors, they're not putting the prices up.
No, they're helping first home buyers and emotional people that want to live in their own home are paying overs for product.
Yeah. We just need to build more houses.
And we're not. Yeah, that's the issue.
But also it's catch-22. Like the governments, when they say, oh, we need to build 20,000 houses a day or whatever, a minute, there's no labour to do it. You need the immigration, and it's a chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
So you need the immigration to bring the people to help build the economy and the homes of tomorrow, but they've got nowhere to live.
And we can't afford to hire local people.
Well, there just isn't.
No.
Like we've got friends that own building businesses and they just struggle to get good contractors.
Yeah. Because they want too much money.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
the issue, isn't it? Yeah.
I guess.
All right. If the values go down with property, which is a lot of cases rare, we don't have a problem with that. We don't get any sort of margin call like a single stock if the value dipped below acceptable levels.
The NAB equity builder that I mentioned before doesn't have a margin call facility.
At all. As long as you're allowed to... So it doesn't have a margin call on an individual stock.
No, but if you stop paying the debt, they'll sell down automatically.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's probably the same with everything, isn't it?
Yeah, if you don't pay, they come and get.
Yes.
Whether it's your car, your house, or your shares. It's pretty simple, called security.
Yes.
Might want to Google it.
And it'll never go to zero. Property in the last million years has not gone to zero
No.
in value.
If it does, there's probably bigger problems.
Yeah.
And it's probably mean that it's World War III and someone's dropped a nuke somewhere and you've got about 20 minutes to live
To
because
get
we're
out.
all gone.
Whereas that potentially can happen with certain companies around the world.
Yeah, but if you're buying an index, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, if NVIDIA or Microsoft died tomorrow, I get probably bigger problems. But if a company listed 408 on the S&P 500 disappeared, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So the risk associated with that is, can you lose all of your money? Yes.
No. And this is probably a point that I haven't written down, but I'll make it a point. With shares, I've got the option to buy an individual share or a basket of shares. Now, I don't know if there are many pooled residential property trusts. But
No, you're right.
I can't go to a managed fund and put $10,000 in and there's an underlying investment into 20 or 30 different residential properties in Australia. Like you can get it with commercial, you can get it with industrial, but not resi.
Correct.
But with shares, I can buy one CBA share or I can buy the whole market, the whole index.
Yes. Just not the whole company.
Well, if you're Elon Musk, you could come in and buy the whole company.
Whereas
You might need $2 billion.
100%. Whereas majority ownership is contrary to that. You can own 100% of your asset in property.
Yes, but there's a big dirty lien on it against the bank.
100% ownership means 100% control as long as you pay the bills. So that's...
Yeah, but if I've got 100% ownership in 10 shares of a publicly traded company, I can keep them forevermore, amen.
You can.
Got anything else there? Well, oh, your fingers are a bit dirty, scraping the bottle of the bottom of the barrel there.
I don't. I think this is. Yeah, I don't know if it's. I'm kicking with the wind.
Okay, don't know what that means, but we'll go with it.
The sports lovers will understand if there's any of them out there. Yeah, I'm done.
You're done. Okay. Okay.
No.
I've got some bangers here.
Have you?
My next point. with equity investing, you've got more access to ownership and tax structures. So if I had money, I can easily put it in my own name. I can put it in joint names easily. I can put it in a trust easy. I can put it in a company easy. I can buy an investment bond and invest in there. It's better potentially for estate planning. So I can have a little bit more control over the estate planning.
Why can't I buy property in different structures?
You can, but sometimes there are more barriers to entry.
Okay. But you said you could
There's
more...
Well, there's more access. So
Right.
I can't buy
easier access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't buy a residential investment property in an investment bond.
No, but that's the only one out of those you've mentioned. I can buy it in super, I can buy it in a company, I can buy it in a trust, I can buy it in my personal name.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
But it's just easier with equities. So if someone wanted to buy a property in a trust, is it a little bit harder than buying it in your own name?
no, because we just set up a unit trust and
What about lending? A little bit harder?
those policies change from time to time, but at the
Okay.
minute, no.
Okay. A little bit more expensive?
Slightly,
Yeah. Because we've got to set up a trust, we've got to do annual accounting for the trust.
yes.
Might
Do you
have a higher
not-
interest rate.
Do you not have annual ongoings with...
It'd be nominal, like compared to
But you still got to set up the trust.
yes,
So that's like for
but
life.
I'm talking about if you had a company set up already or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you wanted to do some investing.
But that would be the same for property.
It
If I already had
would-
it set up.
Yes, however, the lending, it would potentially have a higher interest rate, potentially, if there was a corporate structure.
Questionable. Yeah, that one's a little bit
Yeah,
skewed.
because I think this is the problem when we talk about property. Inherently, there's leverage in borrowing for most people most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're factoring in the cost of that leveraging and that borrowings to then say, right, what rent do I require? Where can I get that? What markets do I need to be in to make sure that I don't blow myself up?
So, are you saying you're buying an asset based on the ability to repay the mortgage?
No, that's one consideration.
Right. Okay. Because I thought you just want to do your investing based on what the most appropriate investment asset is.
That's right. But I'll give you an example.
Please.
If the bank said to me, John, you can buy $1 million worth of real estate, I would go and look at $1 million markets and the best asset types in which to buy historically that give us best performance. And I would look at the yields in those markets. And I would do a feasibility study on the income versus expenses if I was to buy $1 million asset, the one that I think would give us best growth. If that was going to be, if that was going to have a massive cash flow shortfall, then I need to bring my purchase price back to meet my yield. So it's just smart investing to say I'll buy the right asset that's going to give me best value for money for the long term that's not going to blow me up financially.
Okay.
Wouldn't everyone do that? That's not buying.
Well, no, because with property, most people will need leverage, and that will be dictated on how much they can borrow based on their income. Or if I want to just start buying shares tomorrow, I can go, yeah, I want to build wealth for the long term. And
Yeah.
notice I'm like, build wealth. So I'm going to be putting money in every month, building wealth. I don't have to go, well, I need to do this or not buy that because I need income to meet the debt, and I can't get enough debt because I've got a lower income so I can't borrow as much. So it kind of all is intertwined. The other thing with estate planning, which is more flexible, you could set it up so you could carve out a portion of the equities or shares and just transfer it to certain people, or if you had one individual property, your heirs, okay, we're stuck. There's 2 of us who own this property. There's 3 of us who own this property. We're trapped. We're stuck with them. But if it was equities, there's your thing. Run along, do what you want with it.
Portion it off.
One wanted to sell it, sweet. If one wanted to keep it, sweet.
Yeah.
So there is more flexibility with estate planning, potentially.
So what you might do, someone listening in right now in their early 20s, probably not thinking too much about estate planning right now, but they might say, right, we're going to buy some good solid properties that are going to perform and leverage the bank's money. And then when I turn 50, I'm going to build up my equities and start estate planning from there. Now I know that I've got a bit of a tree to work with.
Yeah, I think estate planning should be front of mind for everyone.
But when you're 25, give or take.
Okay, so if I'm 25, when you are building wealth, if you buy the property in your own name, you just need to know in 3 years' time, if I got married or had a child, I've got an estate plan. If I don't have a will or a plan, it just does what the state government says. So everyone has to have one. It's how much thought you put into it. And I think if someone's in their 30s or 40s and they're joining a partnership and there's previous kids, it becomes more apparent.
Yeah, no, I suppose I wasn't disrespecting estate planning in my 20s. I was merely saying when I'm 25, I don't know how many kids I'm going to have, if I'm going to have kids, if I'm going to have a partner, etc. Whereas I wake up at 40 or 50, I've got a better idea of what the family tree is going to look like or is shaping. Yeah,
and I guess I'm just saying it's probably more flexibility with an equity portfolio or ETFs. My last point is there potentially some tax advantages and options that are positive with equities and ETFs.
Tell me more.
Well, the biggest attractor with property investing in Australia, it's the only asset class that you're taxed on the way in, you're taxed during, and you're taxed on the way out.
Because the government know you make the most money from property, so they tax you three times.
Awesome. If you love paying taxes and you love, highly concentrated, risky, undiversified.
Look, it makes the roads what they are. It makes the parks and gardens, our Olympic athletes.
Okay, sweet.
Healthcare, education.
With the tax side of it, if you, depending on your life stage and age, there could be different ETFs and individual shares for different things. So you might be focused on income. So you may have your income in your pension account that is dividend focused, 0% tax rate in pension phase. You'll literally get a higher return because of the internal franking credits, because the company's already paid tax. You get a franking credit. You're at a tax-free environment, so it's literally a cash refund from the government. One thing is as well, most people with property will buy it in their own name, not in super or pension phase. So,
for tax reasons, generally.
Yeah. Well, but most people aren't going to set up a self-managed super fund and buy property.
Well, it's out there. I think the franking credit's probably not too different to depreciation.
Okay. So just a couple of considerations there, which I think it can provide you with more flexibility as you get older with super and pension phase and how you want. Do you want income? Do you want it in your own name? Do you want it in super? You've got more options there.
So I suppose for the share investors out there, just know that you're already exposed within your super already, and you will be for life ever after. Do you want to be exposed outside of there, or do you want to diversify elsewhere into something like residential property?
Do you want one investment leveraged in your own name? with all the risks associated.
So what we're probably agreeing on today is we buy property early on in our life and then transfer some of that to equities later on in life to take advantage of the later on life bonuses of lower tax.
I don't know. You can do whatever you want, really.
I was leading you to
Yeah. I mean, why not do both, John?
Why not do both?
My last point was around reporting and admin. A lot of the investing platforms and super platform, you don't have to worry about getting reports done and trusts with real estates and all that crap. It's really can be set and forget.
Yep.
And an investing platform will do that for you. So they're kind of all the points that I've got.
So just on that, being in 2025 now, property managers give an annual report. So they're basically the online platform for you. Obviously, you got your bank interest that you need to get from your...
Yeah, but you've got to pay the property manager a fee to manage the asset.
Yeah, which is tax deductible and factored into your cash flow.
Okay. So if something's tax deductible, it means it's...
Costing you money.
Well, it means it's worth buying. Is that what we're saying?
No. Tax is definitely secondary to this conversation, though.
Rightio.
I haven't focused on it as a major, nor have you.
Nope. Okay. But look, that's kind of all the points that we've had. Can you think anyone out there if we missed anything? I mean, we've covered a fair bit.
In my experience, when we've had these debates, and anyone else out there has had them, generally what happens is the property people protect the property conversation and the share people protect the share conversation. And there's a few in the middle that have pros and cons for both and look at it with wide lens, is my experience. But
I think we just need to call out that both equities and property, it is a growth asset. And any growth asset that you invest in, you really want a hold time of at least 4 to 7 years.
yeah, and
Otherwise, don't do it.
And you outlined the obvious costs and outlays with property. That 4 to 7 for me is probably 7 to 10 in property, ideally.
Yeah.
But when you look, we go back to that word risk, which comes in many definitions. I think you've got cash in the bank at one end, haven't you? And then as you gradually go up that risk scale, that's where we start to enter into shares and property. And then at the other end is stuff that we don't entertain on this show.
Some of it we do.
Casino?
Well, that's not an investment.
Well, some people say, well, I've got some money, I want to double it.
Yeah, I call that gambling, not investing.
Well, it is gambling, but some people would call investing in some volatile property and shares gambling as well. Isn't it? It's like the terminology that we use, but essentially it's we've got money, we're going to use it to get a better return than what we've got.
By definition, gambling is a game of chance, basically. And if you are buying anything, even if it's a crap place or a specky company, you're not playing a game of chance. You're buying something. Now, there could be a very high chance that it's going to be worth nothing.
Yeah.
But it's not inherently a game of chance.
No. But I suppose the point I was making was you've got a level of risk that you're prepared to take based on your situation, your knowledge levels, the people around you, the money you've got, the incomes you're on, a whole range of indicators, but then you're working out, okay, is it going to be this asset class in property or this asset class shares, or am I starting up a business, or am I just simply saving maximum dollars, contributing to super? Understanding there's options. We're just here today to simply...
Yeah, and I categorically believe that it carries more risk to buy an individual investment property than an ETF of the ASX 200 or the S&P 500.
Does it carry more risk when compared to an individual stock, taking the bank's money in the same manner?
Let's walk this backwards a little bit. Let's assume that we've got 500 grand cash. Okay. We'll call it 800.
Yep.
And we're buying an investment property with cash, so there's no leverage. I still believe that buying one individual property is higher risk than buying one share in the ASX 200.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because you've got to think, and this is like bees nipple stuff, liquidity is a risk.
Yep.
Legislation with tenants and all that stuff is a risk. I've got one person producing the income from that property, where if I buy one individual share, I've got thousands of customers and a board of directors and a CEO who are running it. So although very micro, I still believe inherently one single property is more risky than one single share, as long as it's a top 200 company.
Yeah, and that's probably an important aspect to that. I don't know what the board of directors are up to. I don't know who's leading it. I don't know what their hidden agendas are. There's a lot of unknowns in there. And that's probably, it might be my naivety around that side of investing, but
you really don't know what your tenants are up to and all that.
Well, you do. You've got physical inspections.
Yeah, but when you get them on, you see their financials and their income and all that from day one. Day two, they move in. They could lose their job.
They could.
And not tell you.
Yeah.
And be selling crack and be like...
Yeah, essentially we'd replace them, but
when you look at all the risks, I believe, and the risk is however small, like a risk... it could be a 1% chance of it happening.
Yeah, it's driving
but guess
home
what?
today.
1% chances still happen. That's the thing. So I think when you list all the risks of either side of the ledger, I still think it's less risky. But if you take that one step further, if we've got the 800 grand to buy a residential property or an ASX 200 share or one equity, right? Less risk. Okay, I'm going to buy a freehold property, I don't know, probably can't for this price, but in Gordon in Sydney or somewhere. You know what I mean? Or take it to $2 million. I'm going to buy a freehold property in Gordon in Sydney. It's on the train line.
Yep.
Premium blue chip. Okay, I'm going to now buy CBA shares or Macquarie shares for the same price. No mortgage, it's all cash.
Yeah.
When you look at risks, I still think there's less risk because we get to choose our blue chip and premium property.
Yep.
I still think there is less risk with equities, because what if the house burns down and there's a technicality and the insurance didn't pay or you rooted? So just all these little micro things.
Yep. And I think at the end of the day, I disagree with you, but that's why we're here,
But is it because there's a lack of understanding of the risks?
Well, I think it's...
Or the lack of risks?
It's probably my experience in the asset class to know that it's actually not that bad. The risk is so low. But for first-time investors listening, especially if they've only known shares, they're like, yeah, you're right, those risks are too high.
And I grant you the psychology part, the fact that this share is daily priced and I see my $2 million go up to 2.1, down to 1.0, oh, I'm freaking out, I need to sell. You've sold prematurely. Like there is some behavioural risk there with equities that isn't there with property because it's not in your face every day.
Yeah, no, it's I think
but like
you've got to do what you're comfortable with.
That's right. And if you don't understand whatever the investment is, you do not put your money in it.
No.
Well, you can if you're still listening, thanks for listening. If you found this episode useful or entertaining or fun or thought-provoking, please give us a little 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Send it to a friend or family member. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe or follow if you've made it this far. We'll put a link below in the notes for the audiobook, for the property book. And, well, we won't put the link for the audiobook, but anywhere you get audiobooks. But we'll put a link for the hard copy books in the comments or the show notes. So thank you so much for listening today. You've been real. I've been Glenn, and this has been
John.
See ya. Okay, so tell me quickly, before we have to go, your point around living in it or some BS.
Oh, living in it, yes. Well, where do I start? This point's going to last for an hour because that was the whole premise of my whole debate. But, well, it's capital gains tax free. I get to live out my dream, my Australian dream of living in my own home and painting the walls and doing what I want to it.
Okay, that's cute, but that's not investing, but proceed.
and generally it's your best performing asset that you'll ever own because you're buying it in the best possible location for
unless
the money
you're a
you've
successful business owner.
Which is small percentage to have a business that's worth anything at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's all. There's nothing cute about that. I buy something for 500, it ends up being worth 2 million. I pay no capital gains tax on it, and
yeah, which is awesome. But we can't include that in the debate because it's not a level playing field.
No, and I didn't. But
Yeah,
I
told
just
you not
know
to.
that it's an asset of the same proportion as what we're debating over.
You know, it's the same as when you see builders and they buy a home and they've got they renovate it themselves and do all that stuff and then sell it for profit, bury the expenses in their business for the renovation and flip it and make all this money.
Yep.
That's fine, but I'm not comparing myself to you because you're not playing on a level playing field.
Yeah.
The same with all these tradies or whatever, and they've just working in a cash economy, not paying any tax, and they're so financially successful.
Yeah.
That's not a level playing field. Don't care. Like, you haven't paid tax. You're rorting the system. I'm not comparing myself. Not that I do anyway, but I'm not I'm not saying, congratulations, you've done so good and you should be so proud. It's like, well, you haven't really paid heaps of tax.
Yeah.
You haven't paid tax like on all this cash work that you've had. And when you've renovated the house, you buried all the material costs in your business and claimed it on tax. So
Yeah.
there's that.
The true debate usually over time has been individual stocks versus individual investment properties, residential. And a lot of what you're talking about today as positives have been in equities. Not equities,
ETFs.
grouped funds.
Yes.
So,
But that's also an overarching advantage of the asset class when you think about it.
yeah, it is. But also owning your own home is as well and living in it.
Yeah.
But I was forced to leave it out.
You were.
So,
But that's it. I'll turn it up. You could buy a triplex, buy all 3 units.
yeah.
You got 3 different sources of income. Very similar to an ETF. It's a basket of units.
So what are you saying?
Well, I'm saying if you wanted to with property, so we buy an ETF for the diversification.
Yeah. But I would argue that having 3 units in the one block is not diversification.
It's diversification of income because you've got
That's
3
all.
sources of income. Yeah.
It's the same location. It's the same type of product. It's the same everything.
But the risk is lowered.
Potentially.
Well, I think it's...
The risk is lowered to say we've got 3 tenants instead of 1.
Yeah, categorically lowered, like factually lowered. You got 3 different tenants unless they're all gold miners and you're buying in a gold mining town, like
I would say the risk is heightened because you've got now 3 different tenants to deal with, but you've also got 3 assets in the one market as opposed to one property in that market, and you can put 2 assets elsewhere.
Yeah.
For diversification.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, I could probably redo all that with not using ETFs, because if you look at individual companies, you can buy whatever individual companies you want, right? And build your own portfolio. You can buy whatever individual properties you want and build your own portfolio. But as what we talked about with inherent risk, me buying 3 different individual companies, there's a variety of income streams, and I can diversify. I can buy ARB doing bull bars and stuff. Haven't seen your Prado with all them yet. John got a new Prado, rich much. I can buy CBA, I can buy JB Hi-Fi, I can buy Woolworths, I can buy Xero. Like, I can diversify with individual stocks. All right. Good one. Thanks, Johnny.
chat.
See you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.